What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're doing well. And of course, I hope everything's going well with your trading. So today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest questions traders may ask themselves. And that is, why do traders do what they do with their trading? Now, if you're ready for the truth, then here it is. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that every trader has bad habits, but for the majority of us, including myself, at one stage or another has done some dumb shit in the past. Now, that could be anything from revenge trading, blowing up accounts, not using a stop loss, or not taking profits and allowing greed to override our thinking. Now, obviously, this is not uncommon. And for a business that involves risking money to make more money, it is likely at one stage or another that it will happen to all of us. But the question is this: for those that are still finding themselves battling these bad habits, how can you overcome them? Well, firstly, we need to understand why this happens in the first place. Now, there was an experiment by a leading professor called David Knotts on gambling addiction, and he likened the gambling addiction to a brain disorder. So for those who are out there who are saying trading is not gambling and how has this got anything to do with trading, then I just want to urge you just to listen to this all the way to the end and then make up your minds whether you take this on or not. Now, I'm not saying that trading in itself is gambling, but the behaviors that traders display are very, very closely associated to gambling. And if these behaviors are not nipped in the bud, then there's a very high chance that your future success as a trader is almost zero. And that's the harsh truth. And for those that don't like it and take this on board, then I'll be honest, you're going to be missing out on probably one of the best pieces of advice you're going to listen to this year. So the long and short to start off with is that gambling addiction is likened to a brain disorder, not a failure of will. Meaning that you and I don't necessarily have any personal weaknesses, but rather a biological limitation of the brain, which is something that can be extremely hard to fix unless recognized. And usually what happens is that most traders don't ever recognize it. And that is why once someone finds themselves trapped in the gambling industry or doing the behaviors that they do when they're trading, it is very, very hard to get out of. And this might be like yourself, who is a great trader, who understands the ins and outs of the strategy you use. You're very good at technical analysis for a week, 3 weeks, maybe 2 months, and you're able to consistently make steady gains. But the minute something goes wrong or something is not to your liking, that is when the trap gets you and you find yourself back at square one again. You get to a stage where you stop and you ask yourself, what the happened? You feel really disappointed in yourself, and then you eventually question your existence. So if the behaviors you display and or act on as a trader, that is ultimately the reason you're not getting consistent results, is not a matter of will, but rather an addiction based on the fact that your cognitive bias has changed to the desire or urge to needing to trade, then it really begs the question, is it even really possible to become a consistent and profitable trader? Well, if we go back to the experiment, what they did is they used an MRI scan to detect the brain waves of a gambler whose name was Tony, ironically. They gave him a keyboard to use to play roulette, which is called a fixed odds game. They then gave him £1,000 to bet. Tony's task was to look at the roulette wheel and make a decision to bet. What they identified on the MRI scan is that parts of the brain started to turn on. And once they were on, they couldn't stop. And they called this part of the brain the habit centers. This part of the brain plays a key part in the development of emotions, memories, and pattern recognition. Now, just think about that for a second, how crazy that is. Before Tony has even taken a bet, these habit centers turn on and start to get overactivated. This is the part of the brain that triggers immediately for Tony before he's even placed a bet. Then what happens to a trader if they've had a bad or good experience before entering a trade? Well, fear maybe creep in, cause FOMO. Overconfidence, which is an emotion, can create a lack of clarification in the decision making, which is what is triggered in Tony before he takes a bet. Also, what happens to a trader when they get to the charts ready to trade? Well, their pattern recognition kicks in and they start to identify potential trading opportunities before they even develop or has already developed. And this is what is triggered in Tony before he even places a bet. Now, I want you to think about this as we continue to understand what happens with Tony as he goes on to then take the bet. So what happens next? Well, in a matter of seconds after Tony has placed his bet, his brain starts to light up. And previous to his brain activity, pre-betting, Tony's brain now looks like a light bulb. His visual system gets activated. The back of the brain intensively activates. He watches really closely because he wants that roulette ball to drop down on his color. His emotional regions start to activate. We have the anterior cingulate cortex, which is responsible for a host of functions, and they include things like emotional expression, attention, and mood regulation. Now, the other part of the brain that gets activated is the insula, which is responsible for sensory processing, decision-making, and motor control. Now, sensory processing is how we interpret incoming stimuli for our senses. And as a trader who is caught up in a trade, we experience this stimulation on an extremely intense scale. Then we have the motor control, which is the regulation of movement in organisms, and that possesses a nervous system. So as a trader, how many times have you been in a trade and found yourself biting your nails, walking away from your screens, going back, coming back over and over again? Now, the areas that we have spoken about are the two areas of the brain which make sense of emotions. And these emotions generate the feeling of excitement. Will I win or won't I? Now, this is really interesting. And I'm not sure if any one of you out there are feeling Tony right now with how you feel and behave before a trade and whilst in a trade. But it gets more exciting. After Tony spins that wheel, the MRI scan highlighted something so fascinating, and this will blow your mind. After Tony wins his spin, nothing, and I mean nothing, changed in Tony's brain. And I'll say that again. Nothing changed in Tony's brain. Everything that was triggered and going absolutely crazy whilst waiting for the bet to win or lose and winning stayed exactly the same. The only difference that was highlighted on the scan between winning and anticipating was a slight chemical trigger, and ever so slightly in Tony's brain, which was thought to be a sense of satisfaction. But not a later satisfaction. It was a simple, yes, I've won, and that's good. But nonetheless, winning and waiting to see if Tony won, the anticipation stayed pretty much the same. And that is the key point we all have been waiting for about gambling, or the reason why a trader finds themselves in the positions they find themselves in. And it is this. It is not just the winning that counts for Tony or for you as a trader. It is the taking part. So what does that mean for us as traders? Well, it is simply highlighting that unless you can fully master yourself, identify this one key important fact about how your brain reacts to trading, then you will find yourself in a position like many gamblers who are enticed by the gambling industry and unknown to yourself, find that your addiction is not because you lack the knowledge or the technical ability or the emotional stability to become a consistent and profitable trader, but rather the fact that your addiction and downfall is due to the fact that you thrive on the taking part repeatedly when you don't win, because it is as activating to a gambler / trader as the winning. And as a trader, when you're sitting at your charts with access to 128 currency pairs, 10 different major time frames, and 24/5 access to the charts, you're getting this fix every potential second of the day without even knowing it. In the comfort of your own home, on the bus, train, at work, and wherever it may be, from the easy access of your mobile phone. And if you want my opinion, most traders are doomed. If you're trading the 1 minute time frame, for example, you have 1,400 opportunities in 24 hours where you will find yourself up a creek without a paddle. So what does this mean for us as traders? Well, if you don't set yourself a limit and stick to it, you do not have a defined plan of entry, a criteria for identifying potential setups, a management plan, a win streak and losing plan, a set time to trade, then your chances are, if not already, you will be enslaved by the gambling trap. And your process will eventually become habitual. And then that is when it becomes addictive. So if this is you, fear not, traders, you can change this, but it's not going to be easy. You are probably already programmed this way, and it will take some time to undo this. But if you want to succeed as a trader, which is the hardest industry to succeed in my opinion, you need to make changes. And the biggest change you can make today is by admitting that you are in this trap and making a plan to work yourself out of it and really focus on baby steps and working towards those goals and dreams you desire to accomplish. So that is it. That is my message today. And I do hope you found this useful. It's not the end of the world. Don't blame yourself. You can get yourselves out of it. It is not going to be easy. But of course, if this really means something to you and you really want to achieve the level of success that you are after, then guys, make the change today. If you enjoyed the YouTube video, please make sure you hit that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Turn on those notifications for when we next post, because I'm telling you guys, I'm going hard. Coming back, baby. I'm going to be giving you some good content. Other than that, as I always say, continue to trust the process.